triumphant return to Paris's most famous cathedral.
I think it will look immaculate, beautiful, in a way we've never seen it before.
5 years ago, the world watched in horror as Notre Dame went up in flames.
I see people crying, I see a lot of emotion.
But from the fire, a spark of faith in Paris.
Our mission is to point to heaven. God's telling us, don't forget, this is your mission.
And around the world. And rising from the ashes, an old cathedral made new again.
The president say we will rebuild this cathedral in 5 years. It's the words of the head of state of France. And the reputation of France is at stake.
Ahead of reopening day, Currents News brings you a countdown to the unveiling of Notre Dame. Iconic landmark in the City of Lights, Notre Dame Cathedral standing tall only hours away from opening to the public. It was a completely different picture 5 years ago when the Paris parish was engulfed in flames. Since then, almost 1,000 people every day have worked to restore this piece of Catholic history. And the fruits of their efforts will soon be revealed to the world. I'm Christine Persichetti. We are counting down to the cathedral's reopening, starting from the very beginning when the world watched in horror as Notre Dame was burning in April of 2019. Kristen Holmes had that report.
A beloved Paris landmark ablaze, a fire breaking out at the historic Cathedral of Notre Dame.
So after walking around the outside of the cathedral, we've gone a couple of blocks across from the Ile de Cité to Rue Saint-Louis, turned around and looked back and gasped.
As hundreds of firefighters battled the raging flames, Parisians and tourists gasped in horror as the church's spire fell, followed by the collapse of the roof.
For the beauty of it and the art inside, and yeah, I think it's horrible. And I see people crying, I see a lot of emotions, and I'm shocked myself.
French President Macron tweeting Notre Dame of Paris in flames, emotion for a whole nation, thoughts to all Catholics and for all French. Like our countrymen, I am sad tonight to see this part of us burn. The effects felt around the globe.
I've been there and I've seen it, and there's no cathedral. I think I could say there's probably no cathedral in the world like it. It's a terrible scene.
The Paris prosecutor has opened an investigation into the fire. The cathedral was built in the 13th century and is one of the most well-known places of worship in the world, bringing around 13 million visitors each year. Much of the cathedral covered in scaffolding as Notre Dame was undergoing renovations. Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
Following the flames, Catholics across the globe were sending messages of solidarity to France, including Pope Francis, who wrote on X, formerly Twitter, "We unite in prayer with the people of France as we wait for the sorrow inflicted by the serious damage to be transformed into hope with reconstruction. Holy Mary, Our Lady, pray for us." Prayers for Notre Dame poured in from around the world, including here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Shortly after the fire, then Shepherd Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio told Currents News about his first visit to the famous cathedral.
The first time I saw it was 14 years old. I was on a Boy Scout pilgrimage to Europe that time, and it was the 100th anniversary of Lourdes, and we were in Paris, and we went there, of course, and it's something you never forget. I grew up right across the street from the cathedral in Newark, which is really a French Gothic cathedral also, and we went to Chartres after that and to see it, and just, in my mind, cathedrals make a big impression, and they're really important. Well, it's certainly sad to see Notre Dame de Paris up in flames and destroyed, but not totally destroyed. Thank God, the towers and probably can be reconstructed in a more modern way. 850 years is a long time for a building to last with wood and timbers. So maybe somehow some good will come out of it.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan also offered support to the Catholics of France after the Notre Dame inferno. He spoke to reporters outside St. Patrick's Cathedral.
I just thought it would be extraordinarily appropriate if we publicly expressed on behalf of our beloved St. Patrick's Cathedral and on behalf of the citizens of New York, the love, the solidarity, the prayers, and the sorrow that we feel over the devastating fire at Notre Dame Cathedral.
Earlier that day, the Cardinal prayed inside St. Patrick's for the Blessed Virgin Mary's intercession so that God would preserve Notre Dame. Also praying for Notre Dame, a Brooklyn parish in Cobble Hill that was hit especially hard by the fire. Many in the congregation are French, but as Currents News' Emily Druby reported, the faithful decided to find meaning in the flames.
With the massive blaze at Notre Dame finally tamed, the focus is now on rebuilding and recovering. In the Brooklyn Diocese, the aftermath of the devastating blaze hitting the parish of St. Paul and St. Agnes in Cobble Hill especially hard because of their booming French population and weekly French Mass. Father Paul Anel heads the diocese French ministry. He was devastated after hearing the news.
Complete disbelief. I mean, you would never think, this is such a dear building, such an old building.
While he's from France, Father Anel is now thousands of miles away at Divine Mercy in Williamsburg, where he's assigned part-time. Just one day after the fire, he prays at the foot of a statue of the Virgin Mary, to whom the Notre Dame Cathedral is consecrated. Father Anel believes the fire could be a sign from God.
And also the fact that the spire fell because the spire is what points to heaven. And I think it's also like a wake-up call for us, priests, and for the church, that our mission is to point to heaven. We're a little bit too concerned about this earth and teaching people how to live well and how to be in harmony and at peace. God's telling us, don't forget, this is your mission. You're about prepare people for eternity.
He's not alone when it comes to finding greater meaning in the fire. Father Alex Morard of St. Paul and St. Agnes says to him the fire was symbolic.
It's recalling me to conversion, to stick to the Lord, to look for a deeper faith. To reconsider how I'm living this relationship with the Lord, with others.
Both priests inspired by how the world has come together to mourn and move forward. With the focus now on the future, many here hopeful that with strong support and fundraising, the historic landmark will eventually be restored. In Cobble Hill, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The prayers and power of the Holy Spirit gave strength to the French as they watched the flames soar. Spontaneous prayer vigils formed along the streets of Paris. Parisians singing hymns, on their knees praying as they watched their beloved Notre Dame Cathedral burn. The citizens prayed for the firefighters and for the restoration of the cathedral. Despite the devastation, the faithful in France still celebrated Christ's death and resurrection that weekend. Catholics from the nearby Diocese of Nanterre, located less than 10 miles from the cathedral, walked the Stations of the Cross just days after the fire on Good Friday. While the country was mourning the loss of its cathedral, Bishop Matthew Rouget of Nanterre speculated that the Notre Dame Inferno could reignite the faithful of France.
All the people who have been moved by Notre Dame and want to meet other believers or be with other people to share some sort of event. This type of event, a reawakening, a spiritual reawakening, is a long adventure.
The Archbishop of Paris said it was a time to rebuild not only the cathedral, but also the faith. The destruction of Notre Dame meant Easter had to be celebrated elsewhere in France. But even though the iconic sounds of the cathedral were silenced, Currents News' Michelle Powers filed this report from Paris showing music still rising to the heavens.
Every Easter for the past 850 years, music has come from the towers of Notre Dame, and a group of musicians has made a promise that this year it will still sing. Matthew Bleu is conducting the performance of his life with a group of people that's never even played together.
The world's best composers walked through the doors of Notre Dame, played in the cathedral. It cannot go silent now.
Notre Dame de Paris has always been a haven for those whose callous fingers pluck strings and press the keys of woodwinds. But perhaps for the first time, not one note is rising from the bell towers this Easter Sunday. Instead, they come from another place, the side of the Seine. It's not a place of majesty and grandeur like the inside of the cathedral, but the music, the notes, and the rhythms are the same.
I just bought my ticket in last minute offer, and I was so lucky to get here.
This concert's spontaneous, a rendezvous.
When we saw it burning, we knew we had to do something.
Matthew immediately created a Facebook event inviting anyone with passion to play. Nearly 30 performers from all over the world gathering together at the homeland for musicians, alongside the spot so many forms of music were invented, just feet from where musical notes were first written down.
It touched everybody all over the planet, just like it touched all of us musicians.
Many making the great escape for a great cause, a chance to honor history.
Even though we're not playing inside, we're still playing outside for the cathedral, and in some essence we're creating history, and it's a historic moment to say that we're here, we're standing by the French.
Notre Dame became the musical capital of the world in the Middle Ages, Le Grand Orgue, with 8,000 pipes sending melodies to the heavens for centuries. Today, there would be songs of praise and resurrection, and there are. Musicians gathering to perform like they always have.
Sometimes music is better than words.
And the beat goes on. Not too bad for their first time playing together in Paris. Michelle Powers, Currents News.
There's a lot more headed your way. We fast forward through time, seeing how hundreds of workers rebuilt Notre Dame. The cathedral isn't just an iconic landmark, it's a symbol of the faith in the nation. An art historian gives us a look at what this fire really meant.
I think there's something really quite remarkable about Notre Dame.
Plus, when many worried they would never see the famous face of Notre Dame again, one artist used his work to pay tribute to the cathedral. As we look forward to Notre Dame's reopening, we reflect on the hard work of hundreds of architects and artisans, all dedicated to fulfilling French President Emmanuel Macron's promise of the cathedral's complete restoration in 5 years. Let's take a look at how they got it done. April 2019, flames engulfed the Cathedral of Notre Dame, one of the most iconic and ancient churches in the world.
To see it go up like that, it's pretty devastating.
An inferno so intense, many believed it would take decades to rebuild. Work began soon after, and now, just 5 years later, the Paris landmark is rising from the ashes.
The president says we will rebuild this cathedral in 5 years. It's the words of the head of state of France. And the reputation of France is at stake.
But in March of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic causes work to stop at the 850-year-old church. It resumes in June with a focus on removing the burned scaffolding that had surrounded the spire, which was undergoing restoration when the flames broke out. Spring 2021. 1,000 oak trees are harvested and transformed into timbers, which will become the cathedral's new spire and roof. Fall 2021, all of the burned scaffolding is now removed and work begins on the interior of the cathedral. The organ is dismantled and removed to be repaired and cleaned. The paintings are restored and the church is cleaned. Lead dust is removed from the walls, ceiling, floors, and stained glass windows, none of which were damaged by the fire.
We had a lot of luck because all big artistic works here were not damaged.
2022, the cleaning and repairs continue as the cathedral vaults are restored and work begins on rebuilding the spire. Despite some doubts, workers are on track to finish in 2024.
This is a place where the spire collapsed. You know, this is the center of the drama.
2023, significant progress is made. Almost 1,000 workers are involved in the reconstruction every day, either on site or in workshops across France. In December, a golden rooster is returned to the top of the cathedral spire, symbolizing Notre Dame's rebirth.
To rebuild the spire, we had to build this scaffold, which goes through the vault.
February 2024, scaffolding is removed to unveil the cathedral's new spire. A photographer who documented the reconstruction says he believes the newly restored Notre Dame will be even better than what was there before.
I think it will look immaculate, beautiful, in a way we've never seen it before.
The newly revitalized cathedral can expect more than 15 million visitors in the coming year, and you once again can head inside Notre Dame starting on December 8th. A priest from France who's preaching in the Diocese of Immigrants believes the fire and the cathedral's reopening will spark a resurgence in faith.
What I think happened at that time, it was very beautiful, the reactions. In France, the people praying in the streets. It's as if we realize when that happened how much it means to us.
And according to a recent poll, faith in France is blossoming like never before. About 12,000 adults and teenagers were baptized at this year's Easter Vigil. That's a record number for the country. The report by French bishops says there was a 31% increase in baptized adults from 2023 and a 50% increase in baptized teens. It seems those numbers will only grow as church officials say more and more people are looking to be baptized. They've even formed new teams of catechists to help prepare people to enter into the church. Inside the walls of Notre Dame are centuries of faith-filled history, from the cathedral statues to the medieval paintings. It all shows a beautiful mosaic combining our core beliefs with our story as people of God. Melissa Corsi spoke with an art historian who says the flames brought to light just how important this cathedral is to the Catholic faith.
The Catholic world was shaken when a fire raged, consuming Notre Dame Cathedral, sending flames and smoke far into the air. For more than 20 years, Elizabeth Lev has worked as an art historian at the Vatican. She comments on what the destruction of this cathedral means.
I think there's something really quite remarkable about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, many people sort of took for granted. But mostly what Notre Dame is, it's a collective, it's as Pope Francis said, it's a historical jewel of a collective memory. It is a collective memory of faith.
Liv expressed that this collective group embraced good and bad days, strikes, riots, the revolution, secularism, and even neglect. Yet the cathedral stood.
Christian France, the eldest daughter of the church, the first nation to become Christian, they built this amazing church on this island, dedicating their geographical center to the Mother of God. And everybody helped. Everybody was part of this. This is an expression of the people, of the love of God.
French President Emmanuel Macron has made an appeal, asking for help to rebuild this cathedral in 5 years. Responses and more than $800 million in donations have ensued. People are rallying.
They rally around, some because it's a cultural artifact, some on their knees praying, some standing and singing. But you know what we're looking at? We're looking at a people gathered together, and that's an ecclesia. So it's still doing its job, bringing people together.
From France to the United States and even the Vatican, countries are offering support. In fact, President Trump called Pope Francis to express his closeness in light of the event.
That was Melissa Corsi reporting. President Donald Trump will be at the reopening ceremony for Notre Dame on Saturday. Meantime, in the United States, churches across the country will be ringing their bells in a show of solidarity. Still to come on Currents News, the medieval statue that survived the Notre Dame fire and became a symbol of resilience returns home. Plus, during a time when no one knew what the restored cathedral would look like, one artist's work captured the beauty of Notre Dame. We'll be right back. almost time to see inside Notre Dame, but about a month ahead of the reopening, the bells of the beloved cathedral rang out. Notre Dame celebrated the event on their socials, saying, after 5 years of silence, the bells of Notre Dame ring again in the Paris sky. Following the flames in 2019, the bells were coated with lead dust from the roof. They had to be removed, cleaned, and painstakingly restored. Also returning to the cathedral, this nearly 6-foot-tall stone sculpture known as the Virgin of Paris. It miraculously survived the fire 5 years ago and has been in a church near the Louvre ever since, where it became a symbol of resilience amid destruction for Catholics. While Notre Dame may look and sound like its old self now, there was a time many wondered if the cathedral would ever be the same. Following the fire, one artist feared he may never be able to paint the cathedral's portrait. So he started using his work as a visual tribute to Notre Dame, reminding many of the cathedral's enduring spirit. Currents News' Michelle Powers brought us his story.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous? Au revoir, vielen Dank. Bonjour les filles, comment allez-vous?
He may sound like a native to the City of Lights, but it was only 15 years ago Rick Adam first dipped his brushes in France.
Back in the day, I used to hang or frequent, Chelsea and Soho, and my friends would say, Rick, you need to go to Europe.
It was there Rick met his muse, his mademoiselle, a so-called old lady, the subject of hundreds of his paintings.
The flying buttresses here. You have the spire.
The Notre Dame de Paris.
Stained glass in here in the center and whatnot.
But unlike most tourists who take photos of the famous towers, when Rick puts his brush to canvas, it's from a different vantage point.
The front is just not as dramatic as the rear or the back. You have the flying buttresses, you have a good view of the spire, you have good reflection.
But a back that will never look the same again. This painting, one of his last strokes before the smoke. No longer a reality, but a memory.
Exactly as you said.
Since the fire, they've become visual tributes on canvas.
Chateau de Beignet.
With the power to move people to tears.
It's just one of the most beautiful things in Paris.
Nancy Hennig choosing one with the spire she watched fall before her eyes.
They say they're going to rebuild this, but to me it's going to be like a Disneyland Notre Dame. Yeah. You can't rebuild 850 years.
It started in here.
Rick says his artwork has been selling fast since the disaster.
But I just can't keep up. I mean, when I make them, people buy them automatically.
Explain to him about what's the roof. Sometimes using them as teaching tools to those too young to realize just what the world has lost.
I try to mix a little bit about the history of the cathedral and the history about Jesus.
The artist hasn't painted since the cathedral's roof crumbled, but he says one day soon he'll continue to paint what once was. As long as people still have their memories, the beauty remains. As for this one, it's had many offers.
And people saying they're going to the bank. I've refused them. So yeah, that has went up significantly. But thank you for visiting.
Yeah. He's just not ready to say au revoir.
Have a nice day.
Such beautiful paintings. That was Michelle Powers reporting. So what's in store for the cathedral's grand reopening? It all starts with a ceremony December 7th, which includes the rite of the opening of the doors by the Archbishop of Paris, the awakening of the organ, and songs of praise in the once silent cathedral. The next day, December 8th, is Notre Dame's inaugural Mass, where the Archbishop of Paris will consecrate the main altar. The following week, there will be a solemn celebration every day with a particular theme. And that is this special edition of Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.